That's okay.
Shoo away people.
Oh, shit. Hi, this is the Carousel Podcast. I am joined today by Luthemplaer, who is formerly known as Cringewalker. Luthemplaer lists as his Twitter bio the first thing on there is propaganda minister for the new regime. And you may have seen his work because he made recently a very hilarious and very cool looking Kanye propaganda poster with Kanye sort of done as a Nazi. His other work includes something called the Restoration Bureau, which is creation of these really compelling propaganda posters that sort of see the world through the eyes of if the based side wins and ultimately prevails over the forces of progressive globalism, what those propaganda posters would look like. And then he's also going to walk us through some other propaganda posters, which are Nazi feminist propaganda, which are just fascinating. So in order to make sure you guys are seeing all of this, I'm going to actually screen share, and I'll share this on YouTube as well, so that anybody who's interested to follow along with the visuals can see that, because obviously people listening are not going to be able to follow along. So without further ado, hello, Luthemplaer.
Hello. I've enjoyed your posts and podcasts in the past with different people in our circles, and I was like, well, might as well reach out and say, hey, if you like this work, I'll talk about it, because I recently blew up on Twitter with all this stuff. I figured, yeah, might as well stop repeating myself about how I make this art and finally have a video I can just link to.
With the Kanye stuff.
That too, unfortunately.
Or wait, what blew up though?
All of it.
Just all of it. Well, it's so good. I mean, it's really. I actually saw the Kanye thing and was kind of blown away by it, honestly. But then only today, when I was researching for this episode, did I get into the other propaganda posters you make and realize just how awesome they are. I think they're going to be 10 times more popular than they are now, just because they're so cool. It's just they're easy to like go past, you know what I mean, without reading the small print. So they look cool, but you don't necessarily like know exactly what they're saying. But when you actually read them, they're like incredibly awesome. So I love your work.
Yeah. So the text is what I think is like. I had the problem where like I also have a Substack that like has like maybe a few like dozen people that read it, and people always say I write well, but I know people don't like to read, and so how can I catch people's attention? Art, half like partly AI generated, partly my own remixes of it. But I can go into how it's made if you want, or we can just keep going with.
No, yeah, let's go. We'll take a look at one and see how it's made in a second. But yeah, my whole project is basically involved with attacking the regime via propaganda itself, which is an idea that people don't necessarily think about all the time, because they view propaganda as the product of the enemy versus kind of the enemy itself. But as somebody who's been inside, globalist marketing agencies, which is a very closed off world. It's a world that's very hard to access. And I myself have always only been like a bottom feeder in those worlds. I've seen it. I've gotten a peek behind the curtains, but I've never, I have some people who've gone all the way up to the top, and talking to them is really interesting. That propaganda machine is so powerful and so important, and in a lot of ways it actually is the thing we're fighting. So I think by creating our own propaganda, that's actually ultimately the biggest act of rebellion you could do. So I had another guy on here, I don't know if you saw it, that created a ad for Solomon shoes that was based on Julius Evola. So like,
I hadn't seen that. I want to see that later on.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. But anyway, so what I'm saying is, without even really knowing it, when we scheduled this, you are doing the exact project that I think is the most important thing you can do today. So let's take a look at a couple of these things that you've made, and you can just kind of talk about it. But first, why did you switch from Cringewalker to Luthemplaer, and what does Luthemplaer mean?
All right. Uh, I have been a fan of Academic Agent for a long time, and at some point in time, I decided, hey, I have a pretty decently paying job. I should support him, and it happened to correlate with his infamous video where he justified the Empire's strike on Alderaan as a positive. And I thought, well, there's a bit of AA does these things where he has like kind of like thematic eras, and so that was the Star Wars era. I was like, I'll just name myself Cringewalker and start super chatting like funny comments, and that was like kind of how I started off like that. Um, uh, and it stuck for a while, and that was back in like late 2019, I think. Pretty sure it was before the pandemic, but I didn't like the name Cringewalker. It's kind of meant to be just like a gag for like a month, and then people started keeping on calling me that. I was like, oh, I guess I have to stick with this so that I get a little bit of attention. But eventually, I have been using the name Luthemplaer for about a year now, parallel to Cringewalker. In fact, there is still a Cringewalker Twitter account. I created a new account, switched the ats so that that account inherited the old Cringewalker at, and then this one kept my followers with a new at.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it.
Because I didn't want to start from zero, so I was like, I had like I think like 1,000 people following me under Cringewalker. I was like, I'll just change my at and switch over. Um, I don't like the name Cringewalker because A, I'm not really actually a fan of Star Wars, and B, it kind of served its purpose. It was just like, haha, funny super chat man, and that
Yeah,
was basically it. It's like the brand of Cringewalker was haha funny super chat guy, and that's it. I
got
could
it.
never write anything serious on that name. I knew it. I knew it. So I was like, well, I've kind of pigeonholed my way out into this. Probably
Yeah,
should get
so
out.
super chats, just so everybody understands what super chat is. A super chat is something on a YouTube live stream where you pay and like a couple dollars, it's like $1 or something. And then your comment pops up really big in the chat, and like sometimes it reads it out loud, right?
Yeah. Sometimes well, AA typically reads his out at the end of the show with his guests, and so it's a kind of been a fun way to like just poke some Brooklyn humor in to an English show. Um which can be very controversial sometimes. But it was a gag for about a year. Around 2021, I started using Luthemplaer as a name, and originally as Luth Knight, and then Luthemplaer, and a couple of different names. Just trying out different names and seeing what sounded cool. I'm a big fan of Anglo-Saxon restoration language, like
Got it.
English. Like English is a project, kind of like an internet project, where you try to remove the French influence from English and return it to its like 10 year 1060 original heritage. And
That's
so Luthemplar,
English. You're saying English?
yeah, English rather than
English. Got it.
English.
Yeah. Okay.
So
English. Nice.
I mean, I'm a fan of Tolkien. I'm a fan of fictional languages, but I'm even more a fan of like actual languages. And I figured, why not try to roll around with the English a little bit. And so Luthemplar came about from that, and an attempt to merge Luther and Templar.
Got it. So,
Um,
but are you a Lutheran?
I am now. I was raised Catholic. I kind of like Luther. I like saying I never left the Catholic Church. I just really like Luther, and so I like saying I'm a Catholic who likes Luther because well, Lutheranism in America is kind of cringe, and there's not really a lot of like actual traditional faith left in America in that area. But for all intents and purposes, I guess you could say I'm a Catholic who likes Luther, but in reality, I'm a Lutheran. This causes endless controversy and anger.
Yeah. How can you be a Catholic who likes Luther? Isn't that like an oxymoron?
Well, the key thing is that most Lutherans reject Luther.
Oh, right. Right. Yeah.
So like if you actually like subscribe to what Luther himself wrote, you kind of become like a weird 12th century Catholic revivalist.
Mhm.
If you go by what modern Lutherans say, you end up being like a cringy progressive.
Yeah. Right. 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 So, did you ever listen to the Dan Carlin episode, Prophets of Doom?
I've really been falling behind because of the studying for my uh
Yeah.
architecture license stuff, but yeah.
There's an incredible episode of Hardcore History, Dan Carlin's podcast called Prophets of Doom, about like the beginnings of Lutheranism,
Yeah.
and in like Austria, there was a huge showdown because there was like there was the Baptists and the Anabaptists, and the Anabaptists were basically communists, and they like took over this town. It's a great story.
Yeah, yeah. I think Turnipseed and Redlib did a show about that too.
Yeah,
I'm more familiar from that one. Yeah, and you know, there's that
Munster.
like
It was
that.
Munster. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's that really crazy book that Luther wrote, Against the Raving Horde of Peasants, which that's the title.
That's great.
In which Luther takes up the cause of the imperial government and
Yeah,
technically also the Catholic Church.
yeah.
So it's like it's one of those one of those very strange texts in which Luther, an active heretic, tells heretics to submit to Rome rather than
Totally.
being a cringe. Well, not
Rather
really
than
Rome,
being
but
a
like submit to
cringe,
tradition.
a commie. Yeah, no, he's in the same situation in this story. He ends up going completely against the Anabaptists. He's like, these people have nothing to do with me. Like, get them out of here.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like I like Luther as the reformer of the Catholic Church. I don't really like what Lutheranism has become. And there historically there have been people who were excommunicated who posthumously were reintegrated. So I have hope that Luther one day will be a Catholic saint.
Oh wow. There you go. You're gonna need a new pope first. Although maybe this is the right one. Anyway, okay. So let's just look at some of these great things that you make. Enough babbling. So here is one of them. For people who are
Yes.
not actually looking, this went, I don't know how viral it went because people are probably scared to like it, me included. But it shows
Okay.
Kanye in this sort of perfect, it's an illustration, and he's got kind of a yay in a very swastika-esque circle behind him. Really just a very striking image. So how did you make this and what happened with it?
Yeah, so the suit, like the top half of the suit, is AI generated. The face I partially drew, and also like overlaid photos of Kanye's face. It's not a perfect match, but it's close. I think I lost it a little bit on the eyes, but the really weird jawline he has got captured, I think. But like his face is really hard to draw. I mean, he's got this weird chin structure on the sides that makes him like protrude out.
Well, and you know why that
Um,
is, right?
what, to get broken jaw or something?
Yeah, he got in a horrible.
Uh,
The beginning of his career, there's a famous thing where he got in a car accident right before his like big album.
uh,
His first song, "Through the Wire," his first big hit, is all about that. And it's
I
like
I didn't
through
know
the
that.
wire because he's speaking because he has a literal wire in his jaw. So that's why his jaw's all fucked up. Yeah.
All right, yeah. So that makes him really hard to draw, and I mean, to be fair, it also means that AI literally can't make Kanye's face perfect. You
Yeah.
always have to draw it. So if you look closely, you can kind of see the slight yellow tone shift where I was drawing in the face. And I'm still trying to fix that. It's really annoying the way like his face, but a lot of people actually have that color shift in their face, so I figured I'd keep it.
Mm.
But you can kind of see the brown like chocolatey color where it's AI generated and the yellow that's drawn. It's
Mm.
not a perfect color match. I didn't notice it until later on because I was really zoomed in on it. But I took the yay flag in the background from a 4chan post. This image was first posted to 4chan as a troll. It was also before the Alex Jones interview. Please God, feds realize I didn't like I wasn't part of that. This is a meme
Wait a
image.
second. You're
This is
saying
a
this image was posted by somebody else on 4chan?
no. I made it and posted to
You
4chan.
posted. Okay, got it. But
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying the yay symbol was somebody made that and
Yeah,
put
yeah.
that on 4chan. Yeah, got it.
That yay
Yeah.
45-degree turn. Yeah, I didn't design that. The yay swastika is someone else's work. I did make the like kind of exaggerated flag color and everything, and the aged red. That was fun. I put in that blue symbol from his Twitter icon in there too. If you look close, if you look at this image closer, you start seeing all the places I effed up and was too lazy to fix, like the phantom hairline that's floating behind him, and like little tiny things that you can start to spot out. There is a more HD version of this image that exists that has like 4,000 pixels or something, 4,000 by 4,000. I'll eventually sell that up for like art or something. I don't know, but this is like the
NFT.
like yeah. Oh
Yeah.
God.
Oh, yeah.
And then I realized that the blue Twitter, like the his old Twitter icon down there, the blue necklace thing, the pendulum, that I'm convinced that little blue speck there is what really makes the image stick in your head.
I
Because
totally agree. Yeah,
yeah,
well, just so people know, that's Kanye's Twitter profile picture, is this like blue sphere that I've
yeah.
always found to be very cool. And is this like something that you saw in an actual Nazi, like that, whatever you call that necklace thing that's got like it's like a one-sided necklace? Like what is that?
Uh, no, there was like a really effed up necklace that the AI generated, and I tried to fix it as best as I could. It was a lot more like, but then it kind of looked almost like this, like it could be an eye monocle, but it's not. You don't know. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, right.
So
That's what's cool about it. I actually, the one-sidedness of it looks like that looks like more Nazi
yeah.
for some reason. Yeah.
So I've offhandedly met him in New York occasionally, and he does these like weird fashion like nuances like this, and like that's
Yeah.
very Kanye to do something like that.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd keep like the AI made a mistake, but at the same time, editing it a little bit to make it look like a fashion statement made it look actually like kind of like Kanye legitimately.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. Like you can see, I didn't fold the collar to allow it to go under the neck, so it's kind of just like attached like grossly.
Yeah.
There's all kind of little things in this that I did fix. There's a better version of this, but it's just I'm not gonna release it.
Wait, you met
The
Kanye in person?
my professor, this is before everything, but this is like back in 2014 or 13. He would visit schools, like art schools and stuff,
Oh,
and
wow.
so he visited one of my professors, and I kind of saw him in his like weird like early 2010s fashion stuff.
Oh, cool.
Um,
So,
he visits New York a lot.
so when you're doing the AI here, are you, which program are you using and what are you typing in?
So, if you want to do this for yourself, don't mix and match. Most AI generated art companies or profiles, whatever you call them, they explicitly say you're not allowed to mix and match. So when I do a piece, I respect their wishes, and so every part of this was either hand drawn or made in Midjourney version 4.
Okay.
Um,
And what do you do in
the
Midjourney? You just type in, what do you type in?
not always. A lot of times I have to start with a drawing to get what I want. Because like if you just type in something, the AI doesn't have any like artistic limitations, and so it'll make wacky stuff. But if you
Yeah.
hand draw something, it'll oftentimes make it better. Um, or if you want to just like do single framed like items and then collage it together. Like what I do is if you type in this image into an AI, it will never generate anything like this. It'll be wonky. AI is not smart. It can only handle like one or two topical requests, and after that it'll start making these bizarre hybrid images that don't make any sense. So
Yeah.
like for example, this image, the jacket, the coat, that's derived from Franco in Spain. So that's a Francoist coat. So I typed in like, Francoist coat, and I went through like 20 versions to find something look vaguely accurate. I drew some of these extra elements into it, but like that's it. The African American head I added to. I think the original like input for the jacket was like uh African dictator Francoist or something like that. And so that one item, like the middle third of the image, that is pretty much the only thing here that's AI generated. The face, I had to draw a lot of it. The hairline's kind of a mixed kebab of different things that didn't work out very well. The dark undertone on the bottom is completely hand drawn to match the AI generated middle third. So like if you look closely, you can see the line between where the AI generated the suit, and then it gets really dark, and that's me like hand drawing it, kind of trying to like make it hide and not make it look too bad. But yeah, essentially this originates from like an African dictator Francoist coat, and then everything else I had to hand draw and edit and collage together and do a lot of editing. And whoever made the Ye swastika, absolute genius.
Yeah.
I mean, like this is like a nefariously beautiful symbol. I really like the aesthetic of it.
Yeah.
But I found that on some like I found the Yay flag itself on some random 4chan post, and then I had to redraw it to get that aged look on it.
Well, it's so great because it's like such a remix of things, and ultra ironically, this is exactly what Kanye does with music. It's
Yeah.
like auto tune mixed with samples, mixed with like new sounds he finds around. So it's like you're doing exactly the same thing, just visually. And I think that AI really lets this stuff free in a way that for some reason before these kinds of collages, these kinds of digital collages just weren't really that interesting. So is somebody like what's the famous NFT guy, Dweeble. What's his name? Who am I thinking of?
I don't know NFTs at all.
No, like the main guy. The most famous NFT guy. I feel like he's maybe doing something kind of similar to this because his images sort of look the same. It's like Beeple or something.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, AI can do like single item requests. You
Beeple.
as the artist
Beeple.
have to. Beeple.
Oh yeah. Have you seen Beeple stuff?
Yeah. Nope. I don't know anything about NFT. I've kept away from that.
So he does things like this.
Oh yeah, and that's AI generated.
I don't know. I don't know if he does this all himself or if these are like partially.
I saw his Joe Biden Corona image. You might remember that one.
Yeah.
That's where I know him from. I know the aesthetic. I've seen the Joe Biden one of this.
Yeah.
You know the one with like the tentacles and everything.
Let's see.
Maybe it's him. Maybe it's someone. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
So I think I used to follow him, and I do think he actually makes these on Blender from like stock models. So he doesn't do a whole lot of modeling, but he does. I think he remixes a lot of like stock models into weird things, which is kind of like a 3D version of what I'm doing, basically.
Got it. Okay, cool. All right, so here's another one of these that I also really love, and this one's like very Franco to me, like or like very Mussolini. And what's the best part about this is the map is so crazy and cool. Like, how did you make that thing?
That was a lot of different. I had to generate 50 of those images on AI, ever so slightly modifying it along the way to get that, and even that's not perfect. Like, British Columbia doesn't line up with Washington, so it's not perfect. But I could Photoshop it later on and make it better. And one of the things that was too lazy to because when these images were made, it was like when Kanye initially started his run before the Alex Jones interview, where everyone on 4chan was like memeing this guy, and so I was trying to get stuff out really fast, and so I kind of like got lazy in some stuff. So like the Confederate colors are in the north rather than the south. I was like, shit, dang it, no, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the map was like several generations of collages, little nidges and fixes to fix it. The Chinese star in Canada is on purpose. That is by design. The takeover of Canada by Chinese communists.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of little details. Yeah, this was like a lot of work to do that stupid flag. And even now, I have like 50 versions of this, constantly like beating the AI like a poor dog, telling it to fix itself and wrecks itself over and over. I feel like it generated the Yucatan in the shape of a fist out of like anger at me.
It did. Well, no, but maybe it's like more communism there, kind of.
The Kanye image himself is an AI generated image, so you can kind of see here the Kanye face is a complete fuck up. Like that doesn't look like Kanye at all, but no one's really looking at the face, looking at the map. And so clever me knows no one's gonna look at this guy's face. They just see a dark man. That's good enough. You have to think of this as like when I was generating these images, like there was like a 2-hour time limit before you have to post them before they get stale. Like when the memes were happening on 4chan, you don't have long to post them before it goes stale.
Yeah.
So the idea was like most people here, I suspect they're gonna look at the Kanye swastika and the map, and they're not even gonna pay attention to the Kanye's face.
Yeah. So
like if you look at his face,
there's
like
speed pressure. It's speed art.
Yeah. If you look at this, like if you look at this AI generated images, there's so much fucked up with it. It's not just Kanye's chin, it's like his weird hairline, his eyes that look totally weird, his fingers are completely fucked up, the stars on his chest aren't aligned. I can name so many things that didn't work out in this image, but I knew no one's gonna look at it. They just say, haha, Kanye's in a crown, haha, oh cool map. And like I know how people read these stupid images, and I know no one's looking at Kanye. They're looking at the cool map. So I put more attention into the map than Kanye. I could fix this image and make Kanye look real, but like I was like, nah, I don't care.
So are these bigger on 4chan or bigger on Twitter?
I have no idea. People keep telling me like stuff's on Twitter. I occasionally see like a 5,000 trending image that I made. that someone
Wow.
stole. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't
Yeah.
care if people steal this Kanye stuff because this is just memes. I stopped
Yeah.
making them after the Alex Jones interview because I don't want someone like, why are you making enough? Ooh. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
care. I
Yeah.
just don't want to deal with it.
So what's your inspiration, like for this image? We're going to get into this now because you are specialized in propaganda posters. Where are you getting this aesthetic from?
A lot of it is actually derived from Soviet propaganda, which has a really nice color. Like a lot of the color tones in here are Soviet, like heavy reds, off-white colors. Um, but there's also a lot of inspiration from Norman Rockwell, actually. A lot of the paint strokes specifically. Like I'm asking the AI to use the paint strokes of Norman Rockwell. I might be asking for like
Oh,
Soviet propaganda. Like I'm explicitly telling the AI, I want you to paint this request. It might be Soviet, it might be like some other weird thing, but I want you to use the paint strokes of Norman Rockwell. I love Norman Rockwell. He's like I think he's like the American Da Vinci. Like he has these very distinct painting styles. Maybe more like the American Michelangelo, actually, because he didn't invent any ideas. But Norman Rockwell's distinctive, like Michelangelo, like style of like a definitive art style. I love it. So I'll program the AI to use a Norman Rockwell paint stroke style, and then like add in like requests for Soviet propaganda, minimalism. Like these are, like terms I'll add in to like get it to chart out things I want. It takes like 50 generations before it gets something that I like. Or the cool thing about Midjourney, you can actually submit into the AI an image you drew for it to base things off of, and I'll do that
mhm.
a lot. Like if I get fed up with the AI's like being dumb, I'll just hand draw what I want and feed it in to like kind of like limit its creativity to a scope I want.
Got it. Okay.
and
Well,
and and I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start doing that more because I think that's a more of an artistic approach. Like I don't like treating AI as an artist. I want to treat it as a tool.
yeah. No, which you definitely are succeeding in doing. And I just love what you're saying about, yeah, you're an AI artist in a way. And I think that the speed pressure of it, there's such a cool, like in 2000 years when they're like talking about the art of our time, they'll be like that, well, the news cycle was so dominant then that, these artists time they had to do it quickly, which is so new. That's like a
Yeah,
new, it reminds me of like, when everybody talks about Charles Dickens and they're like, well, the reason he wrote so many words was because he was being paid by the word, and like he had an incentive. Like that's kind of the same thing here. It's like you're this kind of pressure actually makes the art better because it's just like it's part of the
yeah,
sandbox you
yeah.
have to work in.
I had to say like all good art comes from a limitation.
Yes.
There's no such thing as like you never get good art if you have no limitations. I was taught this in my freshman year of university, and I've never seen it proven untrue. Like
Yes.
the more limited you are as an artist, the more creative you're forced to be. You
Yeah.
you can't actually get that's also why I kind of hate digital like tablets. I try to avoid using tablets. I much prefer hand drawing things, putting them into Photoshop and editing them like manually with a mouse rather than a tablet because that limits me and forces me to have creative solutions. I
Yeah.
have a tablet. Like I do have a tablet, but I mostly use it as a second monitor. The real thing I'll use a tablet for is shadow and contrast light. I don't like drawing with a tablet. I prefer drawing with a hand, submit it to easily either using that as a base drawing or submitting it to an AI to add detail to from the hand drawing. That's why I much prefer the
Yeah.
feeling of the paper texture, the stroke of the hand. It just it limits me in such a way that it, like allows me to get creative.
Yeah. I do think that like part of the reason why our current movie regime is so bad is because of, we had this notion that these
Yeah, yeah,
evil Weinstein movie producers were making movies bad because, they have annoying capitalist concerns about length and about it being appealing to the audience in a certain way. We have that notion in our head that, oh, these people don't
yeah,
know what they're talking about. Let the artist just do whatever the artist wants. But actually, what we've learned in the Netflix era is that giving artists carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want actually ends up making the art terrible. Because it's
yeah.
just, all these directors are making their pet projects for Netflix and nobody is there to say no. there's no like pressure on them, so the shit that they're making is actually like not very good.
Could I ask for like a 5-minute break for a bathroom break?
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, you can keep talking about the art.
Go for it. I hate editing, so I'm just gonna like keep talking because I really hate like going in and having to find the thing. I try and not edit ever, speaking of artistic limitations. So I'm just gonna keep talking, and we can look at some of Luthemplaer's other work while he's in the bathroom. So he has this phase of art that is all about what he calls the Restoration Bureau. And the Restoration Bureau, see, you'll see it here in the bottom left. You'll see it here, where this is one of my favorite ones. You see it here on the bottom, 2030. So it's like we're imagining that the globalist progressive regime that, for example, posts advertisements of obese women to stand for beauty, etc. They've been defeated, and now we have this new regime, and these are the images from the new regime. And we're going to look at some Nazi propaganda, because, you know, obviously the Nazis were terrible, but everybody agrees that Goebbels was a genius. And actually, what's really interesting is the Nazis themselves got so much of their ideas for Nazi propaganda from British World War I propaganda. So Hitler and Goebbels and all of them, they regarded.
I'm back.
Oh, sorry, I'm just rambling about World War I propaganda. But all I was saying was that Goebbels and them, they regarded Britain's propaganda efforts and America's propaganda efforts in World War I as a big part of the reason they won. So they were like really blown away by all that British propaganda, which was unifying the country and making everybody lined up against the obviously the, you know, what were they, the Prussians and the whoever was the Germans in World War I. So that's what a lot of Nazi propaganda actually, and then ultimately Soviet propaganda was built on, was actually they were copying their enemy, which is kind of what we're talking about here also. So anyway, I was talking about some of your other work, which are this Restoration Bureau series, and you have a Telegram that people can join that you post these on. So can you tell us a little bit about the Restoration Bureau series?
Yeah, I think this probably came out around the same time as the Kanye stuff, where I was really let down by Trump's announcement speech that he's gonna run again. I found it very low energy, very lazy. And you know, ultimately I kind of like view America as a post-democratic state where it's like, I mean, it's kind of a joke. Like, you know, they can vote harvest whatever they want. I've seen forms of ballot harvesting that are really weird. Like I've seen one of my first bosses out of college would edit where we lived on his records so he didn't have to pay city taxes in New York City. He would change our addresses to being outside the city so we'd have to pay city employer tax. And I started looking into that, and I realized you know, there's a lot of real estate companies that can buy a property and use the address as an address for a voter ballot, and then just like sell those ballots to NGOs, and then don't ask questions about what they get used for.
You mean, but
I
how do
know
they get all the people's ballots though?
you just can go to random people, you know, like 20,000 homeless people in New York. Just go to them and ask for, like, have them are drug addicted and don't know. Like, just say whatever they want and get them to sign a signature. And that's it. Like, you can just write the ballot however you wish. Like, do you really think all the people that go out there to ask people to like write a ballot and send it in that day, early voting, do you really think that those people aren't gonna edit those ballots. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But
No, I mean,
some
theoretically, yes. Theoretically, this is what ballot harvesting
theoretically,
is, right?
yeah. I mean, like, and the word gets used, but no one really understands the process of what happens.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Democrat. Republicans do this too. You have a real estate guy buy up a bunch of property. He says he's going to develop 50 units on the property. He have 50 addresses that you can sell to an NGO. After the election, the property mysteriously gets abandoned or sold off, and the house never gets built. But the addresses were still valid for the election. If you go to the if you get the ballot records and you look at the addresses, they're all empty lots. Because they're empty lots because they're sold off to NGOs. It's not like as if it's not like the real estate guy knows who the hell he's selling to. It could be a Republican, it could be a Democrat. He doesn't care. He's getting paid for it. And this is something both parties, this is something both parties do. It's not like I'm kind of like I'm over politics almost. I'm like so anyway, in the midst, I've known that for about 2 years now. I've seen it. I've known that since like 2016. I saw a lot of it in 2016, 2015 too. Various like contractors and like different architecture companies, real estate companies rather. I started doing this. So I was like, this is really dirtbag stuff. And of course, if you're like a big Democrat city, you're going to get like 70% of the vote for Democrats, you could take 10% of your vote and offshoot the address somewhere else, and you still win, and you've offset 10% of your population for changing the votes elsewhere. They're valid votes, but you just change the address, right? It's not hard to do. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that. There's like a decent like couple of tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that will just change their address for a vote and then go back to where they lived. And then all they did was just they bought like an empty lot and said, I live here, I'm voting for this election. And after the election, they go back, to the original address that they were in, even though they never moved. There's all kinds of things that happen.
I will say,
in the midst of that,
all I will say about this is, and I talked to Lafayette Lee on my podcast about this, is okay, we're in this new regime where now the way that voting happens is different. You don't find out the day of. That's totally different. And what keeps happening, the same process keeps happening over and over again, where the Republican person wins, and then weeks or months even go by, and then, those mail-in ballots start leaking in. And the mail-in ballots are exactly what we're talking about for the ballot harvesting, right? The left has admitted that they opened up a whole new amount of mail-in balloting, largely because of COVID, but they said it was fortifying the election. So look, I'm not saying that I have any proof or know that any of this election tampering is happening, but it is undeniable that there is a difference now, and the difference certainly seems to be favoring the Dems, whether that's legal or not. But what I'll say for our guys, and that's why I'm actually really fascinated to hear what you have to say about this, because it seems like you have some on-the-ground experience that I don't have, is without concrete proof, this whole discussion is pointless. Because as you're saying, both sides do it, and until we have concrete proof, talking about it too much is just going to seem like complaining, sore loserdom. So I think it should be investigated completely, fully, but it shouldn't necessarily be like a messaging point that we dwell on too much.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, and again, like Trump's party did this too. It's just that Trump said that, we can't do mail-ins this year.
Yeah.
And because he actually shot himself in the foot doing that, because the main benefit of mail-ins is that you don't actually know how many mail-ins you have. You can count the ballots on the day of, but you can have like endless mail-ins as much as you want. The Republicans used to do that, and then they stopped. Anyway, change topic.
Okay. No, so let's walk through this thing. So at the top of this propaganda poster, and we're gonna, since my audience is like, there's plenty of like very normie people in it, I want, like, we need to define a lot here. But what we're seeing here is a man, creepy man on the street who looks like an alien holding a Hot Babes poster. It says, "Report all Coomers." And then at the top it says, "Beware the Coomer. Since the fall of the old regime, deprived minds have become desperate for their degenerate reading material. If anyone offered you the old regime filth, report it immediately. Don't end up like this guy." So walk us through the entire framework of this advertisement. And it's from the Restoration Bureau.
Yeah, so I started the Restoration Bureau only like 2 weeks ago as I told you earlier, like I want to create an aesthetic to like nudge people into new politics, because I think aesthetics comes first and the politics follows. This art, I had the inspiration of the Running Man. I think it's the Running Man slash also you know that old 1970s and 80s show about the guy who's been framed, and every episode he's trying to like avoid the guy hunting him. I forget the name of it. Um
I don't know. I don't know my 70s TV.
uh yeah, it was a show about the guy. He is framed for murder. Every episode, the police officer's trying to catch him, and it's like a new plot.
Is it
Um
Dragnet? I
no,
don't even know. It just sounds like
The
that.
Fugitive. The Fugitive. It's The
Okay,
Fugitive.
The Fugitive. Yeah.
Which is also a movie. So
Yeah.
I had those. If you look at old posters for The Fugitive and The Running Man and stuff like that, it kind of has this vibe. So I used a lot of that. I think you can kind of tell what are layers in this. It's kind of like this one I put some effort into. Like the eyes are very fun to like get the AI to do right. That took like 3 or 4 iterations. But
Okay, but before we even, what is a Coomer? What
okay, yeah,
is
sorry.
the old regime?
So in the Restoration Bureau concept, I'm treating everything now as like the old regime, and this is partly based off of French Revolution propaganda, where they would call anything they didn't like the ancient regime, or the ancient regime, like the old regime. The French divide their history as the Roman era, the monarchical era from Charlemagne to King Louis, whatever, and then the Revolutionary era slash Napoleonic era, and then of course the Republic era thereafter. And I like this because the French basically divide their history as anything before the revolution is ancient. Doesn't matter if it's one day before the revolution or 1,000 years before the revolution. It's all ancient regime. And this actually comes from the fact I don't think French has a really good linguistic structure for differentiating between ancient and old, whereas English does. So I didn't do ancient regime. It's too French. My love of English compels me to say old regime. I should eventually replace old regime with something more. I think regime is French, but eventually I got like old Reich doesn't sound so good in this climate, so I'm not gonna say that. But yeah. So old regime seemed like a good like pseudo English, somewhat French sounding term for what defines the period of time from the end of the end of World War II, maybe the end of Cold War. I don't know, end of World War II to like some hypothetical time in the next 10 years when it will end one way or another due to economic pressures. Um, that will be called the old regime. I don't define the old regime. You have common sense enough to know what I'm talking about. Coomer, of course, is a meme word. This has to do with people that are addicted to porn.
Yeah, a Coomer is somebody who's
Um,
addicted to porn.
yes.
Yeah.
If you want to look up what the word coom means, feel free. I'm not going to go into it. This is like the Zoomer word that replaced certain cum kind of words.
Yeah.
And so the Oomer is a meme family that I've really enjoyed. Like you can just like take any word and add Oomer to it,
Yeah.
and that's like you're now making fun of that group of people.
Yeah.
And the thing is, once you name the Oomer, you kind of like create an identity, which is kind of like Oomer is like this like new. It's not really. It's like I'm hopping around a lot. Sorry, but like in Anglo-Saxon times, you would add to any group of people you wanted to refer to. So like you would say the Romers or the Kelters or the Frankers. You wouldn't actually say like with the S prefix like we do now with like Franks or Romans. You would do the ers. That was like the Anglo-Saxon way of regarding a group of people or a culture. In the contemporary language, it seems for some reason this has come back only with the at the front, and so Oomers is like kind of like the modern way of doing it. And if you want like high IQ take on this, like in all of English history from the conquest of the Normans to today, there are two English languages. One has an Anglo-Saxon word base, one has a Frankish word base. Frankish has typically been regarded as the intellectual language, and that's why you have like psychology or government, like they're all Latin-based words these are things that the Normans brought in, and with it they labeled things with a Latin family of words. The Anglo-Saxon stock of words is typically regarded as low class because those are the conquered people. So like, and whenever you see a sentence, you can actually like regard it, is this sentence for low class or high class people based off the use of French or Anglo-Saxon words. People like Churchill. Churchill was famous in his speeches for knowing this. And so he would purposefully change his language from an Anglo-Saxon stock to a Frankish stock, depending on who he was talking for a speech in World War II.
Wait, so give me this is fascinating. Give me an example of a Britannic, or would you call it Britannic? What do you even call it? Breton? What's the language? If it's not Norman Frankish, what's it called? British?
I just call it Saxon.
Oh, Anglo-Saxon.
Really.
Sorry, Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah.
I for some reason, sorry. So just to make people understand, the Anglo-Saxons were from northern Germany-ish / kind of Denmark, right? That little kind of area.
Yeah.
Or the Anglos, my bad. The Anglos were from there. They come over and take over the British islands.
Yeah. So
the Saxons also are coming from somewhere. Where are the Saxons from?
Yeah, the Saxons, they're still Saxony in the continent.
Right.
When Rome collapsed, when the Roman Empire collapsed, the borders came down, and all these people along the coast of Germany were able to enter the empire in various points. You can trace most of this to the 406 crossing of the Rhine, where pretty much every country that you know today in Europe came from that crossing of the Rhine. I can go into history if you want on that. It's a really fun history, but the Anglo-Saxons are it's really the Anglos. The Saxon group comes from the fact that they were, Anglo-Saxon is like they basically spoke a Saxon language. The Anglos are a subgroup of Saxons, really. They're also two different groups of people. It's kind of hard. It's like ambiguous. There's also the Jutes and the Danes and a bunch of other groups that came over with them, but were too small to be kind of counted into there.
Right.
They
all came and took over. The bottom line is they took over the British island.
They took over the British Isles from the Romans and the Bretons.
Yes.
The Bretons are they're Celtics.
The Bretons are Celtics, exactly. So
then all the Celtics were put on the Welsh reservation, if you will. So like the people of Wales are the original inhabitants. The English are the newcomers. And then around, they lasted from the years in like the late 400s, early 500s into the late 900s, early 1000s. So, a decent 500 years of ruling Britain, at which point in time they pissed off the Pope. And so the Pope called the Crusade, and the Normans came to conquer the Anglo-Saxons.
And so the Normans, but the Norman actually means Northman, right?
Yes.
But the Normans at that point are in France.
Yeah. Right? So, you've heard of the Viking Wars. The Vikings were raiding England. They were also raiding Normandy, where the name comes from. And so the Northmen settled in Normandy and essentially adopted French culture. They were never really that French.
So they're like original Vikings who've adopted France.
Yeah, they're civilized Vikings, basically.
Yeah.
And they were granted land in Normandy, so they would stop raiding the rest of France, and then they became a part of France, and then they became a family of people that wanted land because they were like, they were under the realm of the French, but they wanted their own land. And so when England was, not many people know this, but the monarchy of England was excommunicated about 2 years before the Norman invasion. They were having a lot of religious debates at that time. I can get into it another time, but suffice to say, the Pope called a crusade against England, and then the Normans were like, "Hey, we'd like to take over that island and like have our own land because we're tired of living under the French." And so Anglo-Saxons aren't Vikings, but they really should be thought of as like a prototype Viking, even though they come from a totally different area. So if you want like
but not that different, because they were just on the sea, but they were in the German. They were like tucked just below. They were Denmark, sort of tucked just below Denmark on the ocean, but just like on the other side.
Anglo derives from angler. They're like fishermen.
Nice.
So they're anglers. They fish.
It's amazing, and all of what we think of the Anglosphere comes from that one like little tribe of people.
There's still a part of Denmark called Anglia. It's still their original homeland.
Right. I want to go.
Still there.
I want to go see, because I'm also I think probably like you, half Anglo-Saxon. Although, why is it that my what?
I'm not English.
Oh, you're
Much to
not. You
my
just like
sadness,
you just like
I'm
them.
Irish.
Well, but I mean, so why is it that that side of my family thinks of themselves as Anglo-Saxons when really they got conquered by the Normans? So why do we think of ourselves as WASPs? You know what I mean? Like, when shouldn't they be Norman if they were in England?
Yeah, so this is if you want two really great sources to read about this, it's St. Bede's History of the
Yeah,
Britons,
which
and
I
it's
own because I got all into this at one point. I ordered that Bede
and
book, which is impossible to read, but it's like, how do you?
yeah, it's like weird early Latin or
Yeah.
late Latin, but and then there's also the Wolf, Wolf is his preaching is the Wolf to the English, Lupus something Anglos, and this is a guy who lived a few years before the Norman invasion, and he said, "Listen, Anglos, we are deeply in sin. If we don't fix ourselves, we're going to end up like the Britons and get conquered by someone like we did. Remember how we were granted England because the Britons were full of sin, as you see in the Arthurian legends? We're going to become the Arthurian legends if we don't fix ourselves." Sure enough, he's a great person to read because he basically sources his entire preaching off of Bede. And he keeps saying look at how we're acting like the people we conquered. We're gonna get conquered. This is the way it works.
Yeah.
And of course, he ended up being right. However, the thing is, the Normans, although they did conquer Britain, the Anglo-Saxon race really is a indomitable people that do not submit.
Yeah.
And in the end, the Parliament spoke French, the government was French, a lot of early English laws were French. They couldn't penetrate the common culture. It was a failed
Oh,
effort.
I see.
So eventually, like to this day, Norman culture is still heavily in parts of England, but it could never reach into the lower castes of
Oh,
society.
okay. So what we
And,
think of as like grimy English, Manchester, Liverpool, like that
mhm.
shit is still pretty Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, and that's and this is really cool, because the Normans couldn't get the Anglo-Saxons to become French. You end up having a language which served two different people groups. And so the Anglo-Saxons had their words and the Normans had their words. That's why like the F-bomb and stuff like that are considered like curse words, because those are just Anglo-Saxon words for like strike and other Latin words. I don't know if strike's a Latin word, but like England has essentially two words for everything. One that's Norman, one that's Anglo-Saxon. The Norman one is typically viewed as moral and high class. The Anglo-Saxon word is typically viewed as like lower class and like grimy, like you said.
So what are the
Um,
sounds? Like what you said, ology, that's Norman. What's the sound of
yeah,
what's the
that's Greek, but I agree.
okay, well, but then so what are the
Well,
difference in sound? Like generally in the difference in
yeah,
sounds.
English words, Anglo-Saxon words typically have fewer syllables because it's a more archaic language. So
Mhm.
it's more like a base stock. You'll find this with a lot of ancient languages where there's short one or two syllable words for like everyday experiences. And then those words get compiled over generations into longer multi-syllable words for more like advanced experiences. So like Anglo-Saxon words like Reich, one syllable, you know what it means. I mean, it's a state.
Mm,
Shire, two syllables, but you know what I mean. Shire is probably more Britannic, but it still like has elements like blood, toil, tears,
mm,
sweat.
mm.
All of this is single syllable, like single syllable point pointing things. And there's a language, there's a history, there's a theory of language here where short single syllable words uh hit the mind faster than longer syllable words where your brain has to break it up and try to conceptualize it. And so great orators in history have always understood this, that if you want to get a message to the common people, use short Anglo-Saxon words. And then if you want to convince the intellectuals to join you, end your speeches with long multi-syllable Norman words.
Mm.
So like, you have like Churchill where like never in the field of human conflict, like these are like short syllable word, like, blood, sweat, toil, and tears. These are all single syllable words that Churchill would
Yeah,
use for the common people.
right.
Um, yeah.
And then
Uh,
what would he do? We have examples of like what's a Norman like make America great again? Obviously, very very Anglo-Saxon, but what?
Yeah, so
Yeah, but
right. It's like
yeah, very
America is the
simple.
only word that
Yeah,
America is like Italian, right?
Italian,
So it's
right?
like it's
Exactly.
long. Make,
Yeah,
great, right? Like
yeah, make, yeah,
short
right, right.
biting words.
Yeah. So like,
So like,
what's a phrase that's more Norman? I'm trying to think of like an example, like that's higher
well,
class.
yeah, I mean, like it's usually gonna be a Latin or Greek based word. So like like government or like
Ah,
parliament,
okay.
or parliament might be a little bit big, but like they're typically longer words
Yeah,
from
yeah,
like you have to have a background in Greek and Latin to understand them like
yeah.
intrinsically, otherwise you have to be taught them.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
like architecture, right? Like
Yeah, there you
construction.
go. There you
These
go.
are
Sure,
longer
sure.
words.
Yeah,
Um, like you can have like genocide is a long Franco
there you go.
word.
Oh, whoa, we
Where
should it's so funny how the word racist, misogynist, anti-Semitic,
yeah,
um, what word did you just use?
genocide, not the other one.
Genocide. All of these words are like sound exactly the same. They all have this
Yes, and
like the
then
snakes in them
yeah,
somewhere,
yeah,
almost
and
every single one. And it's like funny that like homophobic is the one that doesn't. And like that's the one that we all kind of like accept. Like
yeah, you can
nobody
kind of get it,
really
like
minds being called homophobic, like whereas these other ones sound so nasty.
and it's by design. Like what you're describing is a lot of like you can once you notice this, it's impossible not to notice it more. You can usually pick up the etymological roots of a philosophy based off the words they use.
Yeah, yeah.
If you get really good at this, you can just like dismiss entire like speakers based off the words they're using because you can tell, all right, this guy's trying to rar me up into some ridiculous utopian vision, but I'm not going to deal with that.
Yeah, yeah. God, so funny. All right. Well, that was really fascinating. Thank you for that great aside. So anyway, finish unpacking this one and then we'll move quicker through these. But what's the overall point of this that we're saying? I mean, I know what it is, but I just want to hear you explain it.
Yeah, well, it's like dogpiling on Coomers, right? It's like it was made in no nut November, so it's kind of a little bit of a tail end encouragement
So
for
again,
people.
we got to tell people what these things are. So No Nut November is okay. The larger framework for understanding this is that the globalist regime, the whatever you want to call it, the modern left, one of their mechanisms of control is porn and the widespread proliferation of porn. And oft cited is this example of Israel, the state of Israel, flooding was at the West Bank with pornography during a certain time that they wanted to control
Yeah.
them, or us, the U.S. sending porn to Islamic fundamentalist countries to try and undermine them, because what porn does is make men sort of unvital and impotent and tired because they just are jerking off all the time, basically. And
Yeah, and go on.
what's really funny about this, actually, though, is in one of the number one rules of Orthodox Hasidic Judaism is no spilling of seed without the purpose of pregnancy. So it's actually funny because really,
Yeah,
No Nut November is like actually one of the most Jewish things if you actually look into what Judaism actually is. But of course, nobody understands that. But anyway, what we're seeing here, we're imagining a future world in which the globalists and their porn have been overthrown, and the new regime vilifies people who jerk off all the time, who we're calling coomers here.
yeah, and once you name a form of action or behavior with these like short Anglo-Saxon terms, you can very quickly proliferate into the public mind what is a bad thing. Like this
Yeah.
is enemy, this is bad. Don't be like this guy. Like
Beware the
and one of the best things about this Umer like term that like blew up in the last few months, maybe a year, I don't know. Like it started showing up like maybe a year or two ago during the pandemic era. I forget what it was from. I mean, like boomer was kind of where it comes from,
yeah,
all of them.
boomer,
Um,
zoomer, yeah.
yeah, and so like it started as like terming the differences between generations rather, and so like
Yeah.
boomers and zoomers, that was where it came from. I think that's where it came from. I can't think of anywhere else. And so like the baby boomer generation was this
Well, we
term
have
that then
doomers now, doomers,
yeah,
which
doomers,
mean
which
people who are just
millennial.
pessimists. No, doomers are
Yeah.
pessimists, aren't they?
Yeah, but like because so many millennials are pessimists, they typically get
Okay,
associated with it.
doomers.
But
Yeah,
this Umer term can be latched onto a lot of behaviors that we don't like. So like Coomer, like there you
yeah,
go. You've just and in like in 7 words, in 7 letters, you've essentially identified an entire chunk of the population. Which, are you going to go through the elaborate explanation of what like masturbation is and porn is and all these other things, or are you just going to use the word Coomer that quickly? Everybody gets it like very
yeah.
quickly. You don't have to explain it. And if you don't get it, you'll figure it out soon enough.
Right.
And that's really the power of both propaganda and language. Propaganda is
Yeah.
something which propaganda has to tap into the vulgar, the vulgarity of a language
Yeah.
and formalize it into a term. Like it's like making scientific what's vulgar, which is very hard to do. It's an art. It's hard to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the art's cool and everything, but the art's just there to grab your attention with complementary colors. Once
Yeah.
you read the text, it gets into you.
Okay. So good. So cool. Let's keep moving
Yeah.
here. Here's another quick example that I really like. This one's a little easier to understand, but here we're saying report all obesity rhetoricians.
Yes.
The old regime could
Go on.
only achieve equality by crippling your biology. Not sure why you capitalized biology there. Reveal their
Mistake.
monstrosity by restoring your physiognomy.
Physiognomy.
How do you say that word? That's
Physiognomy.
big in our
Physiognomy.
world. Physiognomy.
I say
Whatever.
physiognomy. I've heard physiognomy too, but I don't know.
Physiognomy.
So
Equality is the elimination of quality, is what we're seeing at the top here. And we have a man. This is a very Nazi-ish kind of Ubermensch physical specimen. And behind him is a bunch of fat people. So explain this one very briefly. This one's a little easier to get, I think, but
after what we've just said, you can probably notice all these words are longer Norman words, right? There's very little Anglo-Saxon. Like there's very little Anglo-Saxon. This is meant to
you're
be
right. This is a very high-end one because it's rhetorician, physiognomy, biology, elimination. Yeah. Love it.
So this is literally targeting like intellectuals, and of course that's why Prude shared it. It picked up Prude's an intellectual, so because he picks it up and shares it.
He sure is.
Like you have no idea the power. Like you do know, but like the power that using the word choice, hijacking there is that natural divide between Anglo-Saxon and Norman word stocks that you can weave good propaganda with. So like obviously the people that are talking about this are all intellectuals. These are all people that know these words, that are like want to think about a piece. They're not just reading it and going and moving on. They're actually like studying it. And so it's kind of designed because I know the words are longer. There's a little bit of extra detail in the imagery. Like there's fat people in the background. If you look, you start noticing they're all on their cell phones, or they're all like kind of like doing little things. Like it's a piece meant to stare at. So I know you're going to be staring at it because of my word choice. I guess the main thing to look at, the word equality, the prefix e can usually be determined as like that which is not. So equality literally means lacking quality. Quality is that which is above the rest, right? So this is interesting because it's interesting that equality, like you mentioned S words, right? With like racism and stuff like that. Equality has no S's, of course. Equality is a sharp, boxy Greek word or Latin word, I forget which, but it's kind of meant to like flatten, and it's on purpose. The E is literally the prefix for elimination. So when you hear the word equality, what you should really be seeing is like non-quality, the lacking of quality, because quality is inherently unequal. In order for something to be qualitative, like have quality, it has to be more than the
it's
rest.
non-quality. It literally means no quality. That's great.
So
dude, that's so insightful. I really want you to write a Substack piece for the Carousel about how short words are nationalist and long words are globalist, because I'm assuming the Normans had much great, because even as you're describing Norman language, you're actually saying none of it was Norman. It was all Greek. It was all Latin. It was all other things. So really, like longer words, we like to think of as longer words as smarter, but in fact they're dumber because they need to do more work to describe things to more people. They're globalists. They're like brown. They're this. I'm saying brown as in a mixture of a zillion things together, not as in brown people. Right. And whereas actually shorter words are in a way more nuanced and specific to a certain people.
Yeah, it's and and by using those words correctly, you can make people think. Because like if you're because of the word choice, I know the people reading this are going to be educated, and they're going to stop and think, huh, yeah, equality does mean elimination of equality, and
Yeah.
it'll make them reevaluate that word.
Very cool. And so here what we're talking about is, of course, the proliferation of imagery of obese people in advertising largely, which we're all witnessing now, and we find so appalling. And at least those of us who are, have any concern for natural beauty, because as I've written about quite a bit, the globalist regime, the existing establishment, has sort of switched their advertising from celebrations of beauty to celebrations of ugliness, more or less. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I've written about the reasons for that. But I don't know. Do you want to take a crack at why they do that? Why do they show us
fat people don't protest? Fat people don't fight. It's that simple.
Well, so that's more or less what I've written about. I call them dependent identities. So
that's a good term, yeah.
Yeah, more or less the globalist corporatocracy is recruiting citizens. They don't really give a shit about selling products anymore, right? They would much rather sell 10 people lifetime subscriptions than sell 100 people a widget. So, so these people that they're trying to get to be lifetime subscribers are people who they can sell an identity that is dependent on their business. So the most obvious example of that is, what is a transgender person? A transgender person is a lifetime patient. They have to go get their medicine every single week for the rest of their lives in order to affirm their identity. They're like a customer who, in order to not turn into a werewolf, you have to go buy the cure every single week, right? Forever. And that's the kind of customer they want. They don't give a shit about somebody needs to buy some, nails from the hardware store. They now want you to buy an identity from them that in order to keep the identity alive, you have to continuously buy, you're a subscriber to them, which is really much more of a citizen tax relationship than it is a capitalist relationship. You're basically paying a corporation for your status as a citizen. So
yeah, and that can only exist when you just destroy the family, because usually you get that from your parents.
Well, or you get it right. You get it from, and that's why the regime hates family, hates religion. It hates all these other things that give you identity. It needs the things. It needs consumerism, basically, and or bodily destruction, whatever. And so the reason it celebrates fat people is because it is much more interested in converting a class of weak people to be citizens than it is to selling people a product, right? And when you're selling beauty, you're selling people a product to give them that beauty. Whereas when you're celebrating a citizen, it's very communist, right? When you're when your propaganda celebrates the worker, you're basically celebrating the fat dependent piece of shit. All you're doing is celebrating that person. You're not celebrating an aesthetic. Anyway, okay, so sorry, that was a long thing. Let's do one more of these because I love these so much. I really love this one, the anti-natal thing. Yeah, you really got to talk to Bennett's Phylactery. He's doing a whole thing on natalism, like celebration of natalism, which I just sent this to him.
Feel free to DM me any names because I'm crap at spelling names.
Yeah, we got to get you. I actually want to. We'll talk after this, but anyway, this was the last one I want you to explain because I don't really get it. So here we have a very complicated one. It says at the top, the Manoujois Mirage. How would you say that?
Yeah, this is a failure. I regard this as a failure.
No, dude.
It's pretty. It's more like art. It's a pretty art piece, but it's not propaganda.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is it's like, are we watching the trolley problem? We're seeing a trolley thing going into the sunset on a bridge, but there's a bunch of cars, or is it people falling off the bridge? And at the bottom, we see the old regime built their bridge to utopia on the victims of their dystopia. Your capitalism. I don't understand your capitalism.
That's a mistake too.
If
I
you have
gotta be more
information,
careful. That's
just own it. Just say there's a reason why. If you have information on the crimes of the menage-joie, submit it to the Bureau for Expedited Investigation, Restoration Bureau 2030. So what's this one?
Well, people have been talking about the managerial elite for a while now, and I was like, what's a better way to saying managerial elite? Because that's a really long thing to say. Manageois. That's just it.
Yeah, the menage-joie. I get it. It's like the bourgeois.
Yeah.
It's the bourgeoisie.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
manage-joisie is what you're saying here.
So
what is the managerial class? Tell us that before we lose you.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like the professional class of useless jobs that keep the gears running.
Like marketing people.
Marketing people, HR. I was thinking more HR people too,
yes,
but
HR
like
people. Totally.
Like these, this is I'm actually convinced this is the regime's attempt to keep job numbers inflated, because this is now like a huge chunk of the economy of people that would otherwise be unemployed. How is it that we can have like such crappy economy but only like less than 4% unemployment? You create a new class of jobs that you're basically paying off from a recession, right? You're paying off this group of people, and again, like the managerial, like the HR class, HR departments are required by law to manage things that are required by law in order to fulfill legal requirements required by law. There are a non-economic tumor sewed on to like otherwise healthy companies, and a lot of times they become malignant and take over the company. And like these are like the government says you must have 50% employment of women, and will tax you if you don't. And so the HR department takes over and is like, okay, we're going to hire only women until we make those numbers, and then we'll get a tax break. And
well,
so
that's not entirely correct, right? I mean, we're headed there, but that's not exactly how it. I mean, you don't actually get taxed more if you don't have 50% women yet.
Yeah, you get taxed less if you do.
Really?
That's the way it is. You do get tax breaks. Well, this may be a state issue rather than federal issue. Well, at least I think in New York, if you have certain,
I think it's on the
quotas,
board. It's on the board, but it's not in the company, right?
Okay. Yeah, I know the board's true. Maybe I'm misremembering.
I mean, you probably can get all sorts of. Yeah, I'm sure there's all sorts of like. I don't think it's like a law. Probably all kinds of charities and stuff you can do. Probably. I mean,
it was also if you have certain number of women employed, we'll give you a loan. That's another one.
Well, no, that's definitely true. I mean, that's for sure. Oh no, 100%. You get free loan money for sure. Not free, you have to pay it back, but at low interest. Anyway, okay. So what are we seeing here with the menage-joie?
Yeah. So it's the mirage of like what were the I don't define the crimes. What I'm saying is like making everyone like you're saying, like buying your identity, losing your identity, atomization of culture into hyper individual consumers.
Yeah.
And what does that do? That destroys you, right? This is vaguely based off of a I don't remember where I heard it. It might have been from a Syrian guy that I used to hear, like who knew old Christian literature really well. But basically, in the Bible, the Tower of Babel is made of bricks. The temple of the Lord is made of stone. And there's a difference there. Bricks you don't have to think about. You just lay them on without thought. Bam, 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 bam. You have a wall. And in stones, you have to think about. You can't just lay a bunch of stones together. You actually have to rearrange them, chisel them, and have the stonemason has a relationship to what he makes. He has to think about it. He has to put effort in. The bricklayer doesn't think. He just does. And that's why the Tower of Babel, everyone's speaking one language, the building's made of one material, everyone's one thing. That's Babylon is defined by this like gearwork civilization. We say gearwork, back then they call it bricks. Everybody's an exchangeable gear you can take out and replace. Different times, same concept. Rather than bricks, you have gears. Whereas the temple of the Lord, it's like God has to like figure out how all these crazy people can fit together into a single thing. Usually fails, but when it works, it's really, really strong. And so that's kind of based off this, where like the people are falling off the bridge to become a new column of the bridge to utopia. It's not clear. I didn't work on it. I should have added a base there of the people becoming a new tower for the bridge, because you can see the bridge doesn't actually get to utopia. and something like has to keep building it. And so like you're building a bridge to utopia with the bodies of the people that get atomized into bricks.
Got it.
None of
Okay.
this is clear from the image. It's a failure. It's a complete failure.
Well, it's interesting, but yeah, this one's it's a little hard, but it's not a complete failure. It's just, I think the ideas are really cool. It's just a matter of understanding them. Okay, well, I want to make sure we actually have time to talk about some of this Nazi propaganda, which we're going to have to now go through really quickly because we're running short here. But let's switch over to some of these Nazi things that you've come to share, which was why we started talking originally. So you had posted, I forget what it was, but you shared something with me that showed some Nazi feminist propaganda that I'd never seen before. And it seemed like you had some really cool sort of deep cuts here. So what did the Nazis have to do with feminism, and what was their propaganda around that?
So this guy here, John Hertfield, he's a card-carrying communist. He was a communist, and he made a couple of Weimar era art about like female liberation and the communist revolution, which the Nazis kind of copied for their own propaganda because it was really powerful propaganda. I think they tried to hire him or arrest him so they could force him to do work for them, but he fled the country. John Hertfield sounds English because it is. He changed it. He changed his name to an English name because, like you were saying earlier, the Germans were fascinated by the British culture in World War One. John Hertfield was so fascinated by British culture that he changed his name and pretended to be British.
Oh wow!
So he's a German guy, but he was like,
Schopenhauer, as we just learned on the recent BAP episode, was also a German Anglophile, apparently.
Yeah. There's a lot of them that did that. Where like there was this whole branch of Germans that were completely fascinated by the British. I mean, from the German perspective, the British are like their offspring, right? They were the Anglo-Saxons that crossed over and become a new country. And so like this is like, in the same way that the British look at America as their kid, the Germans look at Britain as their kid. It's like this weird wonderland.
That's cool.
So John Hertfield, he was a communist, and he made, if you go forward, one image, he made these like anti-fascist propaganda pieces that were kind of really cool. They were collages of photographs, kind of like what I do. A lot of my work's inspired by his work. Where he did these like collages of photographs and drawn stuff. So the photograph was like the AI generator of its time. You didn't have to draw something; you took a photograph and then you could use it. This one's that first one you go into next. This was really cool. So it reads, whoever reads the bourgeois newspaper becomes blind and deaf.
Love it.
So he was really. Nowadays we associate the bourgeois with like elite progressives, but in his time it was the elite conservative German Empire. So like who's reading the imperial news? They're blind and deaf to progress, right?
So he was working on behalf of Weimar?
I wouldn't say on behalf of Weimar. He wanted to push Weimar to be more progressive. So he's like, he wanted to rout out the remnants of the German Empire from Weimar Germany. He was using his propaganda against the conservative faction.
Okay.
Mind you, his politics are different than ours. We would probably agree with a lot of his criticisms of conservatives. This is a different time period of progress. So for them, progress was like, why are we funding these like corrupt retards? But anyway, go on.
Okay. This is very much like mainstream advertising. Like if you look at like Creative Arts magazine, for example, this is very ahead of its time. It's like everything that wins a design award for print is this exact thing. It's like a visual metaphor with a payoff line like this. So this is great.
He invented the process. He basically invented the process. This one's called the conservative and his puppet, which even as like reactionaries we would kind of agree with this, right? Like the conservatives always put up their strong guy puppet that does nothing when they're in power.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So like this is like a Weimar puppet, right? Like I kind of like this one a lot. I think I could remake this one eventually. If you go back one, the one with the magazine, I think you might have seen my to Democracy Dies in Darkness one I sent you. I can send you the email. It was one of the ones I posted.
It was Marxism Dies in Darkness.
No, Democracy Dies in Darkness.
Oh yeah, I think one of yours. You mean?
Yeah, one I made. It was based off of this image, basically. I want to show how I'm inspired by this. I'll send it to you if you want on Twitter real quick. Yeah, so you can compare and contrast the two images of how I blatantly plagiarized this piece.
Okay, here we go. Let me switch here.
Yeah, you can put like double sided. I don't know.
Nope, wrong thing. There we go. I love it.
Yeah, so this was basically directly based off of that, right? Like but like twisting it into like, you know, democracy dies in darkness, but they're the ones making it dark. Uh Essentially, we didn't turn off your lights is reducing the long text that he wrote into a much shorter version, right? Like, you know, whoever reads the bourgeois magazines becomes blind and deaf. Let me reduce it to we didn't turn off your lights. A lot shorter, gets to the point.
I feel like it's stronger, honestly, without the "we didn't turn off your lights" because I don't actually
Oh
get
yeah,
who's the "we."
yeah, that's true.
I don't
Was kind of
understand
like,
who
you
the
know,
"we" is.
yeah.
I think
I
that
might,
this is honestly, it's without "we didn't turn off your life." It's just this woman with "democracy dies in darkness" on her head. I think
yeah,
that's perfect. I think that's
yeah.
strong
The
enough on its
when
own.
I eventually sell this, it's not gonna have the text. I have
Yeah.
one version of it without it.
No, I think you
Let's go
could
back.
make a few versions of this. This is fucking great. I haven't
Yeah,
seen this. Is this? Did you tweet this one?
yeah, this is a few weeks. This like a week ago or so. So I made this a while ago.
Send me one of these without the
Yeah.
we didn't turn off your lights. But yeah, this is really great. No, you're doing the same thing, but
Uh,
but it's also just you're saying the same thing, right? Bourgeois newspaper, more or less.
yeah, yeah. But
Cool.
like it's fascinating to me that like it's really weird that the what this commie was saying is essentially like he had the same problems we have with our progressive leaders now, which
Yeah.
lends to the fact that like when you're in the top, you tend to be corrupt.
Well,
That's
no,
what
I mean the
happens. But
entire time, right? I believe fully that all the Hemingway, Orwell, all these guys would have been on our side today, right? I mean, who would have
yeah, probably.
would Orwell of his time be woke? Like, fuck no, he would be against them. That's his whole point. You know, he wouldn't have joined the he wouldn't have joined the Ukrainian army. Like, we're supposed to believe that? Like, no way. You know, I mean, he joined the army against Franco, but that was just a totally in their mind, authoritarianism was right wing, and they were wrong. And I mean, they were wrong. Obviously, the Soviet Union proved them wrong. But you know, I think that all
Yeah,
those
a
artists,
lot of the there's a book by Orwell called Notes on Nationalism, which is really good. It kind of explores how this tends to produce an anti-nativist view of yourself and like self-destructive views. Orwell's a complex figure who like developed over the years. We could
yeah, no,
another
he
time, but
wasn't a communist at all. And I mean,
yeah,
1984 is very much, you know,
yeah,
anti-communist just as much as it is fascist. So,
yeah.
okay, so what's this guy?
Yeah. So the hangman and the justice. So like, you know, corrupt courts that allowed Hitler to take power, basically. It's a nice little
Oh,
piece. You know, Der Henker Linde. I can't say that German word, but it's a nice little piece of a collage of like a, you know, blind justice that's been abused, like she's been beat up.
got it. I see.
Um,
I see.
you
Wow.
know, you could call this more like bondage justice, but
Yeah. So in
um,
today's version would be like
like the
Sotomayor and what's her name, the new one, what's her name, Kentanji Jackson. It would be them like talking someone to death. Like, well,
well,
it
more
wouldn't
like
be. They
no,
wouldn't be
I could
beaten
see
up. They
them.
would be like. It would be like sending justice to HR. It would be like they're like,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
I could imagine them. A good piece of propaganda would be them beating the definition of women, right? Like just like beating it up.
yeah. There you go. Yeah, it's like
Um,
it's a definition of a woman. You beat up women. The definition. Yeah, that's a funny one for
yeah.
sure. Okay, and then here's another
Um,
one.
and
Swallow,
this is like
swallow.
yeah. So that was this was like, you know, the meme that almost destroyed Hitler, basically.
Really?
Because like yeah, it was a very popular piece. It got put into a lot of magazines right before Hitler took power. Essentially anybody who published this got sent to the Gestapo after he took power.
Wait, so what happened to
Uh,
Hartfield, by the way? I can't imagine
he
he
had to
got
flee.
fucked.
He had to
Oh
flee
yeah.
he okay, well, funny story. Hitler takes power and he they come for his house. They come to his apartment. They're gonna arrest him, and he escapes through the balcony door. He escapes like right as they're raiding his apartment.
Wow.
It's not clear if they're gonna arrest him to force him to make Nazi art or to like just kill him.
Yeah.
Um, but they're day one of of Hitler's Germany, they come for him.
Wow.
Uh,
And he gets away.
he escapes. Guess what country he escapes to?
England.
Czechoslovakia.
Czech. Oh, okay.
So he flees
Yeah.
to Czechoslovakia,
And then
and then
immediately
he has to flee
gets, yeah,
Czechoslovakia
right,
because
right.
Hitler
Immediately
invades
gets
that.
taken over. Yeah, right.
So I'll go into him more at the end, but we should go on to the next piece. So
Okay.
I know this piece. This piece is basically like I'll go back. Sorry. The basic idea is that like Hitler had all these conservative factions funding him. He also had a lot of communists funding him, like the beefcake Nazis who they wanted to take over after Hitler took power and replace him. So people don't realize this, that most Nazis were communists, and Hitler had to get rid of them when he took power. Like they called them beefcakes because they were brown on the outside and red on the inside.
Oh, really?
So
I mean, I've
yeah,
read
so
Rise and
like
Fall of the Third Reich, and I don't remember that in there, but I believe you. I didn't know that most of them.
yeah, maybe not most. I should say most of the SS was, and so that's
Okay.
why not the SS. Sorry, no.
The brown
I
shirts.
forget which one. The brown shirts, yeah.
Yeah,
Most of the
which
brown
were
shirts were
called
common.
something. They had a different. They were the SA, right, in the beginning, and then the
Yeah.
SS took over that.
So
Yeah.
the history there is that if imagine if Trump somehow convinced Antifa to support him.
Yes, right. Not
That
not
is what
far.
that is what happened.
Right, right.
That's essentially what happened. And so after he took over, Hitler was like, oh shit, my entire like private army is communist. How am I going to get rid of
Yeah.
them? And
Yeah.
so there was this bizarre era of Germany where Hitler was in power and all the institutions were communist,
Yeah.
and he had to like, and so pieces like this came out where like everybody knew the communists were funding him and they were going to take over. And so like this little piece, mind you, by a communist, he takes their gold and he spouts out tin because everybody viewed him as a Fed. Everyone viewed Hitler as a Fed. They viewed him as like this communist Fed. Oh, they're gonna get rid of him once he's in power, and it's gonna be a communist state.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyway, let's so to say final words on Hartfield. He did eventually flee to England, where he was viewed as a alien agent of suspicion. The greatest irony is that after World War II, he came back to East Germany because he's a communist, and the communists didn't believe him. They viewed him as a Nazi.
Oh yeah. Well, dude,
So
he needs to make a movie
he
about this guy. It's a great story.
yeah, he basically never managed to reach the popularity he had in the 30s because the communists thought he was a fascist and the fascists thought he was a communist, and he can never make anyone believe what he said basically ever again.
Well, I also the whole power structure. I mean, no, Weimar was a globalist power structure, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So that all got dismantled for a few generations there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
Anyway,
what are these things?
after he fled the country, the Nazis were like, we didn't like the guy, but his art was really good.
Yeah.
So we're gonna just rip it off. This is from the woman in Family, Home, and Workplace, which is kind of like an anti-Weimar propaganda museum piece, envisioning, they were basically trying to envision what would the German woman be under the Reich. You can see from that map, Czechoslovakia is not conquered yet. It's very early in the days. So if you go next image, this image is based off of the newspaper one, remember? So now you're looking into like a progressive woman's head, and you're seeing pills, garbage, sleeping, booze, and it says
so
emotional
good.
stress at work. So this is like this. They're basically plagiarizing Hartfield's work, but for their view. So they've completely like turned the tables around and made their own version of this.
I can't even tell really what we're seeing. Like what is actually happening here?
So you see a woman in that circle. There's like that woman sleeping. Next to her are like sleeping pills. There's like work office stuff and clothing and like emotional. The text emotional stress at work is like, don't be a druggy woman who works and goes and tries to take care of your family. You have to pick one.
Yeah. So they were the Nazis were trying to get women to stop
Working.
working.
Yeah, go home.
Yeah.
go home. And so this is like the woman's you can sell the woman's wearing like a business suit thing from the backside. Has a collar. It's kind of like this like business attire thing. Her hair's cut short like the flappers in the 1920s and 30s. So this is a
Yeah.
businesswoman.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's kind of looking into the mind of like what is the businesswoman? She's an overstressed, drunk, and drug addict that can't do
Wow.
anything right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a pie chart of, if you look closer, it's not a collage, it's a pie chart. It's like
Yeah.
the hours of the day she's spending doing different things. And it's a powerful piece because it's basically saying like you don't have time to be both a woman and a worker.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right. Right.
I see. I should we cut that frame out?
No, it's fine. Speaking of
Um,
perfect timing.
yeah.
No, so wow. So what do you think about this today? Are you in agreement with it? Are you in agreement with these
Yeah.
Nazis?
Well, ironically, I'm in agreement with both the anti-fascists and the Nazis.
And the
Somehow they
Nazis,
both
right.
somehow they're both saying the same thing from like this is a good the reason why these two pieces of work are really good is because they showed how departed from reality current day stuff is.
Yeah,
Like if both the card carrying communists and the fascists are saying things that are relatable to contemporary society, I think you might have gone a little outside the overturn window.
you're right. Something's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, this
uh
is completely I mean, it's just I had forgotten that that was such a big part of the Nazi uh belief system. Well, it's like traditionalism of women. I sort of forgot about that until I re-saw this. I mean, this is not
yeah,
even close to as good as Hartfield's work, though, right? This is much
yeah,
less.
it's a shadow. It's a
Yeah,
shadow.
it's not even.
They couldn't they couldn't get the guy, so they could only plagiarize, and it's kind of a shadow of his work.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's what's
But
also
it's the
so in advertising we learn this technique called unique but familiar, right? So in
yeah.
unique but familiar work, the visual metaphor always has to pay off the line. So the reason why this works so well in that way is because we're talking about somebody being blind and deaf, right, which we're familiar with, and then we're seeing somebody be blind and deaf in a different way, in a unique way, right? We're expecting this person to actually be blind and deaf, but then we're seeing, oh, they're not actually blind and deaf, they're covered in newspaper. So it's unique but familiar. It gives you everything in advertising in basic print and OOH, which is out of home advertising. It has that unique but familiar twist. Whereas this is describing the metaphor, right? There's no twist here. It's just saying, here is somebody who's stressed at work. This is what's going on in her head. It would be different if the word stress here, for example, was something a twist. Like if it was, we were seeing like the stress of a different definition of stress, right? Like it was like a something being crushed, right? If her head was being crushed by a vice, that would be a different definition of stress. Or if it was a different definition of work, right? Or emotional, that would be what. That's why the other one works and this one doesn't work as well, because it's just it's C saying. We're seeing exactly what he's saying, right?
Fun fact, you can see it later on, but that's exactly what I did when I made my own version of this. It's not a vice, it's just like piles of paper on someone's head.
There you go. Exactly. Then that's why stress works there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can look at it some other time. We don't know. So this is kind of this is actually a really interesting one, because it's actually the Nazis trying to say the third world is doing something better. So on the top, the text is like, what must a woman do on her period? And
this is the red tent. This is the red tent, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so at the top you have like the Weimar woman who refuses to rest. She will do work, activities, everything, and like go through the pain of it and not really do the womanly thing of isolating yourself and letting your emotions process, right? At the bottom you see like the dark-skinned natives that are more smarter than the Weimar women, who are like know how to do it, right? Like isolate the women, let the men be by themselves until you're back to normal.
Right.
And so this is a very rare third worldism from the Nazis.
Yeah, which would seem to be not what they wanted to do, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that people are this is something that gets like kind of like edited, where like it's really weird. Fascists or more multicultural than globalists.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny.
It's really weird. It's a really weird time period.
Yeah,
Uh,
fascinating. Okay, what's this one? This one,
so
I don't understand this one at all.
so both of these are saying like das ist Aberglaube, whatever. It's that is superstition. And at the top one is like an old crooked nosed woman recommending like some crazy brew to like hide away your menstruation time period. Go back to work, woman. Don't worry about the period. Don't deal with it. Don't be. You have to go work for like Weimar, Germany. It's like this like old Jewish woman telling her to do that with the crooked nose. And then at the bottom, it's an ointment that helps you stay at home and process through menstrual cycle. It's a product. I forget what product it was. It was like an early version of like a tampon, basically. And so this is the Nazi selling tampons.
This is the Nazi tampon ad.
Yes,
Because
this is a
they're
Nazi
saying,
tampon ad.
but they're saying, so that is superstition. But where are we seeing that they're telling her to go to work?
Well,
Because
she's in a business attire. You see the difference in
okay.
clothing?
Yeah.
You see, you're used to that business. So put yourself in the mind of someone in the 1920s. Everybody older than the age of like 30 is wearing a traditional clothing style, and then everybody under the age of 30 is wearing these like business casual short hair suits. And
Okay,
so
got it.
you don't have to say she's going to work. You know she's going to work because of what she's wearing.
I see. Okay, and this
It's
woman's
it's
telling her to go. What does this say? Nicht waschen, kein frisch wasch ansehen. What does that mean? Do we know?
I'm not good at German. I think it's like
Yeah,
do this and you'll be clean.
I see.
Um
Okay, and then go to work. Whereas this
yeah.
bottom one is saying stay home, and this is care.
Yeah, this is care. So like your job as a woman is to be at home during your menstruation cycle and take care of your family. It's not to go to work and take some crazy drug to make yourself be normal.
Well, but actually, the
Uh,
funny thing is, like tampons, it's very confusing because tampons actually do help women go to work, right? I mean, that's kind of like
yeah,
at the
nowadays,
bottom.
yeah, right. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a really it's a, one of those weird times. Like
yeah. That it's
you have
like
to
there's
recognize the culture difference.
right. There's so much like signaling here that we just don't understand. Okay, we have two of the same here. Okay, what's your worries?
This is well, this is post-war. This is late 1940s, early 1950s. Uh, and it's basically like what's the post-war democracy
Oh,
trying to do to like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like they're hijacking that style. And so what does it say? Your worries are our worries. Do the dishes and don't forget to vote, right? Like you see
Yeah,
the
this
voting
is
ballot
like
in the back.
housewives, Hausfrauen. Yeah,
Yeah.
yours are our work.
Don't forget to vote for us, the socialists, right?
And then it must say vote now or vote whatever said means. Must
I don't know what
say
waltz
or something.
said means. Waltz
No,
sounds
vote
like vote,
has to
probably
be
is vote.
vote, right? That has to be vote.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you see this thing where it's encouraging women to like participate in democracy now that your traditional roles are done. Opposed, the Nazis told you to do all those things. Now come back and be part of globalism again.
Man, these are awesome. Where did you find these? These are some like rare pepes.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I collect them. There was a few different research things at my PhD that I collected them from. But
That's great.
so this one's interesting.
I think you might be the only smart person I've ever met to get a PhD or try.
Or I quit my PhD because it was a joke and I didn't want to deal with it.
No, I
Um,
taught postgrads at UCSD when I was I taught a
yeah.
workshop for them, and I mean, no offense to them, but they're definitely not the best and brightest. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I got my master's. That's good enough for me.
right. Did you get it
So
in
this is
propaganda?
no.
Okay, we won't
I'm in the construction field. That's
Oh,
it.
right, yes, construction
Um,
and architecture.
s-
Cool. All right, what's
so
this?
this is interesting because you've probably seen the one on the top. You probably haven't seen the one on the bottom. Uh, Fun fact that icon that like the heads of state through the years, that was originally a fascist propaganda piece. Soviets stole it. So
Yeah.
the text down there is what the king conquered, the prince formed, the field marshal defended, and the soldier saved and united. It's kind of regarding like the generations of German identity from empire to republic to like fascist Reich and stuff like that. that icon was actually the Soviets loved it, and so the
Uh,
Soviets, this is just like it's detached from the rest of it. It's just like the Soviets stole fascist propaganda because
yeah.
Stalin needed a lot. Stalin became a complete nationalist during World War II. Like he went from communist to nationalist. He
Yeah.
kept the communist title, but like Stalin was a national socialist. I'm sorry to tell you, he was a
Mm,
national socialist.
yeah.
He threw out the globalist regime and became a national state. Yeah, Stalin was a nationalist.
So we
Um,
have on the top here, we have Marx. Who is that? Hegel, number two?
I think so.
It's
Yeah,
got to be
Lenin,
Hegel, then
Stalin,
Trotsky,
Mao.
then Stalin, then Mao. Mao is
No,
obviously
no,
China.
I don't think. I don't think Trotsky's in there.
No,
He's
wait, who's the
removed.
bald guy? That's Stalin. My bad.
I,
Sorry. I
I,
was for some reason mistaking that for Trotsky. I'm just wondering. Yeah, obviously Stalin or Lenin. Duh. So it's Lenin, Stalin, Mao, and then so who's
mhm.
the guy? Who's left of Lenin?
I think that's probably Engels, but I don't know.
Yeah, Engels. Did I say Hegel?
Possibly. I don't know. Hegel
All
came
right,
before
sorry.
Marx, right?
Yeah, no, it's got to be Engel.
Um,
Uh, so okay, and then on the bottom we have who's that? The Prussian guy.
yeah. I can't remember his
All
name.
right, well,
He
whatever. We get
was,
the point. We are
yeah.
embarrassing ourselves, but yeah, it's a very we got to make one of these. The globalists need. You should make one of these for the globalists for sure. It's got to be like
Yeah. Well, I'm
Kamala.
sure someone's made this for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Um,
FDR. It's
yeah.
FDR. Then whoever passed the Civil Rights Act, and then Obama. Then Chelsea, the transgender person. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The progress of bio-Leninism.
the progress of violeninism from day one. Okay, cool. And then so finishing up here with
Okay.
these guys. Oh,
Oh,
these are all these
hold
birth.
on a second. Hold on. Give me two. Yeah, it's almost dinner time here, so I have to.
Oh, yeah, we can
But
wrap up. We can wrap up very
yeah,
short.
this little bit here is really fast. So this book, there's two books I want to present here. Is like a kind of like I showed you a bunch of images. Where does this data for these people come from? Like where are they getting the data to make their propaganda? This is a really good piece of data. So in the 1930s, the Germans were aware that partly due to colonization, partly due to World War I's traumatic death rate, and partly due to economic factors, that Germany was going to have a problem around the 1960s to 70s in terms of population. It was going to become an unstable situation where there were going to be. This book predicted the baby boomers, and so they said, this book made in the 1930s is saying by the 1950s we're going to have a huge population. It's going to get smaller, and by the later on in the 90s and 2000s, there's going to be an economic crisis. We have to deal with it now, or we're going to be completely screwed. And so it's kind of funny that they kind of saw this coming all the way in the 1920s and 30s.
Wow.
And so this is basically like the data mapping out how the pyramid triangle of Germany was getting really messed up due to the wars and problems of the recession. They knew the birth rate was going to keep going down. They knew that there was going to be a lot of problems with sustainable society. And they certainly didn't want to rely on immigrants. So they were trying to figure out how can we fix this without relying on immigrants. Of course, ironically, Germany decided to try to solve the problem with immigrants.
Well, ultimately,
Go
yeah,
next.
right, because they lost. Yeah.
So this is like I think this was made in 1933 or 34, but you see the Volk in 1910, good triangle, or post-industrial stable. The Volk in 1930, we have a baby boomer generation starting to form. The Volk in 1960, we have a lot of people we have to support.
Yeah.
So you can read I tried to translate the text. This is Google Translate. I was too lazy to try and fix it. As the figure shows, the German people in 1910, the establishment of a regular pyramid, which on the wide base is dormant, on the ascending age groups showing normal crumbling. So normal death rate.
Yeah.
The age pyramid of the year 1930, which is a few years before this was made, shrunken floor base has already become a sad reality. So we see World War I's affecting us. If the decline in birth rates beyond 1933 is remaining unchanged, it would be impossible to continue to exist unchanged after only 30 years. So they're saying by 1960, Germany will need immigrants. Years, yeah. So we would like to see the Commission and the member states in this respect about half as many children and twice as many old people than in 1910. Without people without youth and aging. This is not good translation. Like
Yeah, no,
too
I mean,
many
look,
young.
it makes
Yeah,
obvious sense. It's just saying that um, you're going to have a top-heavy
yeah,
civilization as your birth rate declines,
yep.
and that's not going to be sustainable because then you're going to have a bunch of younger people trying to sustain a bunch of retiring people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the really cool thing is that they know something like birth control is going to get invented soon. They know they can predict that this is going to be something that happens. The birth rate's going to crash. What are we going to do about it?
yeah.
And
So
so a
how
lot of
do
the
they know
propaganda,
that? How can they tell that
because it's
going to
the Industrial Revolution, and there's a new thing getting invented every year. And
happen?
they knew something would happen eventually, that they have to deal with this. And so this book is basically telling the Reich, like, listen, nice that you have a new country and a new government and all that. Fix the problem with the family, please, before
Yeah,
we're fucked.
yeah, okay.
Um,
Wow.
if you go next, this is another one. So this is another one with the propaganda where you can kind of see, like, in addition to the plummeting birth rate, they wanted to figure out how can we shape the birth rate so that the colonists, these are like half African, half German, can be bred back into proper Germans, essentially. So like this is a phenotype map, physiognomy
Sure.
map. Here's who should marry who, so that by 1960 there's no more half Africans in Germany, or they're bred out basically. The Nazis would go further with outright sterilization. This was kind of like a we don't have to sterilize anyone, we could just breed them back into Germans by doing this. Um, and
Why are
so
you
this is
saying
like
half
the
Africans? Why half Africans?
because Middle Africa, so there were like thousands upon thousands of half African intermarried people from Africa coming back into Germany.
Because of Germany's, but Germany only had like two colonies, right? In Africa, wasn't it like
A
very?
lot of yeah, but like tens of thousands of people are coming back from there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Uh, and plus also the Reich was conquering Belgium with its especially France too. A lot of intermarried colonists.
Yeah.
And so the Germans were like, well, I want to differentiate. The Germans were like, hey, here's how we can peacefully make ourselves European again. The Nazis were like, fuck that, I'm going to sterilize everybody
Yeah.
that's in Europe.
Right. Right.
So like you can view this as like the kinder, gentler
Yeah.
eugenics.
Got it. This was so it was already on their mind, but yeah, the German,
Yeah,
the
and
Nazis
yeah,
did it.
this is before Hitler was in power. I think it's
Yeah.
before Hitler's in power.
Here's a
And so
nice
here,
anti-Semitic
have you?
one.
It's not meant to be. But it's
Yeah.
actually that photo is half African
Oh,
German.
okay. So he's not a Jew.
Um, yes, no, he may look like it, but he's actually a dark German. So they were called the Rhine bastards. So like they're like
Oh,
half African.
got it.
Um, yeah, this is before anti-Semitism, basically. This is
That's
before
definitely
they.
before it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, like before it became, yeah, yeah.
before it became a thing.
Um,
It's always
so
anti-Semitic.
they were saying, in 1936, some parts of the Rhine have like 50-50 African mix, Aryan mix. Oh no, by like 120 years from now, what's that? That's gonna be like 2020, the year 2040.
Yeah.
Oh no, we'll have like a tiny minority of Germans left. Oh no.
I like how the German guy has like a really gay pose. He's like, "Hey."
Well, you know how they are. You know how they
Yeah,
are.
he's like, "Hey, boys." Whereas the other guy's like, "Oh, give me your money."
Yeah,
Okay, here's
well,
more of this
um,
same thing.
this is like same things. Like this is projecting the year 1975 and 2000, like predicting the pyramid triangle problem. I
Yeah.
think it's a pyramid. I think it's actually the gender gap. I forget. But anyway, this is another book. This is I actually just bought this book because I've been looking for it for antiques. This one is really cool. I think it's called Geert und Volk. I forget what it's called. Like what about the Volk? What about the people? Published 1937, so like middle of the early fascist, or mid fascist actually. Go next. So this book is also a source of a lot of propaganda material where they're saying,
Oh,
hey, remember World War One? Remember the problem of dealing with populations? What kind of propaganda do we need to fix this problem? Like the marriage rate is collapsing, the birth rate's collapsing, and then the diagram on the right side over there. By 1955, we're going to have this problem that's going to start showing up into the next generation. 1955, sorry. This is depicting, I think this is showing when the people born in 1955 are old. So this is probably the year 2020 or so. This is like our year. The right image is like kind of projecting our time period,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So like the
yeah.
last,
I get it.
maybe more like maybe
yeah, like the 70s, basically. It's saying that the younger people aren't going to be able to hold up.
yeah.
It's just showing in more detail what we've seen already, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, but there's some kind of cool early versions of that propaganda of like showing like how can we support this weight distribution of support? We're not. We need to fix this. If you go next, you can kind of see a little bit more of this. These like pseudo propaganda where it's like they're trying to visualize the problem.
No, this one, no. There's something else happening in this one because look at the phases. It's like you have young people. Oh, I get it. Yeah, we're going through the years.
Yeah, it's birth year. People born in 1910, people born in 1934.
Yeah, but I don't actually get what's happening. Why is it like, because it's actually not that bad, right? I mean, it's actually the 1934 one is fine because you have plenty of people. And then what's the 1955 one? Why is that bad?
It's almost equal. It's projecting like, the next one in the 1970s is going to be too many old people to young people, right? So in 1910, it's about like a lot of young people and a few old people. 1934, there's more old people, but not many more young people.
Yeah,
1955, it's not, it's each year is a tiny pyramid. It's not one giant pyramid.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Okay, last but not least.
Yeah, so here we have a few images of like, how many kids you'll have to make that problem go away if you wait until the 1970s, right? Are you really willing to have like 7 or 8 children in the 1970s to support this problem?
Yeah. Right.
I also like the fact that they're like kind of projecting future fashion, like the they kind of called the 1980s. I gotta say, like a lot of these styles look almost 1980.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, that's it. That's my little dive into propaganda.
Well, dude, this was really fascinating. I can't believe we went that long because there's just so much great stuff here. And I want to cut it off while we can because we're way over time. We're at like very long. But dude, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find your stuff? I'll put a link to the Telegram for the Restoration Bureau series. Where else can people find you?
I'm on Substack as luthnight.substack.com. LUTHKNIGHT, like that kind of night. You can type it in later on if you want. And then my Twitter is Luthemplaer with an AER at the end. You could probably link it in the bio or something.
Yeah, man, I really hope you start like selling these things or somehow.
Yeah,
I mean,
I want to look into the copyright issues because I'm using AI to generate parts of the image and then I'm collaging them together. So there's enough remixing that it's my own creation. I just want to make sure what's the like how do I credit this? How do I source it so I don't get like in trouble or anything?
Well, so here's so I studied copyright in law school and I wrote my like law review article on that. It's really kind of what I just would always say is just do it until somebody gives you stuff about it, because you're transforming these so much. Anybody saying that the work is so transformative that you're doing that it would be absolutely insane to me if anybody ever. But then again, anybody can make any complaint they want. That's the really annoying thing. Like they could have absolutely no case at all, but some a-hole could still sue you just cause they can't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of I'll help you though. If you ever get sued, let me know. I can help you figure out a fair use argument.
Yeah, keep eye on the Telegram and Twitter. I've ordered some test prints from Fine Art America to see if they come out good. Hopefully they'll be good, and then I'll hopefully be able to sell them before Christmas, so you all can make some nice Christmas cards for your
dude, relatives. I would so buy some of these Christmas cards, man. I will invest. Also, I'm gonna try and get you to. We'll talk about this after, but we'll try and get you some professional work as well. But all right, man. Luthemplaer. Luthemplaer. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thanks again.